Afternoon, boys. How are we?
Very well, thank you. Very good.
Yeah, all good. Cheers, Jared.
Well, good. Right, so welcome back to the Cardiff New Football podcast. We're on episode 4 now, then, right?
Yeah, I think episode 4 going strong.
And we're actually delighted to have Gareth with us from the Cardiff Blues visually impaired rugby team. Gareth, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, looking forward to having a chat with you guys.
Good stuff. So initially, just a little introduction about yourself and about the team, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Gareth Davis, based in Cardiff. I'm a team manager and also player with the Cardiff Blues visually impaired team. So the name obviously gives it away. It's a rugby team for people who've lost some of their vision. It's the first club in Wales that the Blues have really sort of taken it under their wing and are running with it. And there's other clubs, the Ospreys are developing a team, which we'll talk a bit more about at the moment. But it's really, it's one of the sort of fastest growing disability sports globally, really. So yeah, it's going really well.
Fantastic. So you started, was it last year you started?
Yeah, it was 2019, towards the end of 2019. That was with Cardiff. And then we were just getting going. And then obviously, COVID came along. And it's just been put on pause until now, really, where we're looking at May to get going again, hopefully.
Right, I see. So for those who, people like myself who probably won't have seen any games of visually impaired rugby, how does it work? What are the rules, and how can people watch it? If they
Sure.
want?
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I suppose the easiest way is how to describe it is that it's been deliberately designed to be as close to mainstream rugby as possible. Because what you see with a lot of disability sports is that they become so diluted from the original sport. It's like you're not really getting anything from it. I grew up, I played rugby from, sort of 11 into my 30s when I, had my vision. And so I wanted to find a sport that was as close to rugby as possible. And thankfully, VI rugby is there for me. And I think I'm so passionate about it because it is so close to the original game. So the differences are that it's sevens, so it's rugby sevens. It's touch rugby, so there's no tackling. And scrums and lineouts are passive, so there's no pushing or jumping really. But that's it. The rest is the same as mainstream rugby.
Right. Yeah. So sounds like Ben. We were talking. We had the boys from the rugby on last week. We had 2 lads from rugby on. Yeah. We were saying about how a lot of us kind of like rugby, but we don't like the physical side of it. So a few boys from the football club would be keen for that, because the rugby side of it I feel like they enjoy, but it's just obviously the non-contact element is.
Yeah.
Is that something you miss from playing rugby before, or is it something you've got used to, the non-contact element of it?
Well, I do love contacts, I've got to say. I don't know, I think that's just in you. You either like it or you don't. But I've got to say as well, just things are different these days with work and whatnot. The recovery from, and also you getting a bit older, you take some big hits, and it does take, a good few days to get over it. So I don't miss that side of it. And that's one of the sort of the big things that I found in that transition, that mindset, going from only knowing contact sport into a non-contact sport. It does take a little bit of time to adjust to that, and also you give away quite a few penalties during that transition.
Yeah, I bet. I bet it's so weird going from that to going from trying to tackle blokes.
Yeah, but there's very good reason for that as well. Because of our site, we can't see people coming.
Of course, yeah.
So you can't brace yourself and prepare yourself for that hit. So there would be quite a lot of injuries. I mean,
yeah, of course.
You have your natural collisions, but yeah, it's no contact. So, but I still would like to put big hits on people, but it's just part of the game. You can't do anymore,
So obviously the other element to that means that obviously it can be mixed. So that's another. So if you want to talk about that, how you've
yeah, definitely. What we're trying to do. I mean, just to sort of give you a bit of background about people who live with sight loss, or who are registered blind or partially sighted. Just to dispel a few myths, really, to begin with, that 90% of people who are registered blind can still see a little bit. They've still got some vision. You know, before I lost my sight and was registered blind, I thought that meant you just see black. That's just not the case at all. It's a difficult world to find yourself in, because the world's not set up for people with sight loss. You know, there's been a lot of adjustments and accessible stuff made for them, but it's quite a lonely place as well. I mean, today, you know, in the UK, I think 75% of people registered blind are unemployed. So it can be, what I'm saying is it's quite an isolating lifestyle. So we've, again, the big part of the rugby is to be as inclusive as possible. So it's inclusive in terms of gender. You know, we you know, certainly at Cardiff, we've got a couple of women who play with us, you know, superb players. But what we're really sort of saying as well to people is, even if you don't want to play rugby, you've got sight loss, you can still be part of the team, you know, because there's lots of things you can do off the pitch for us. So we're just trying to sort of like bring people in and get people out into a different environment, you know, because again, with sight loss, you tend to stick to your routines because that's safe. You know, mentally it's safe and physically. So just to sort of get people out of their comfort zone a little bit by coming along, joining in. And we found that really helps people grow as well in terms of confidence and self-esteem. So we're really making the game as inclusive as possible.
That's great. So like, obviously in terms of Cardiff Blues as well, how I know you train at Arms Park, which is fantastic. So how often do you train? What sort of things have Cardiff Blues put in place for you to kind of make it easier to?
Yeah.
So
to get going. Well, I've got to say that as a club, the Blues could not have been more welcoming, supportive. They didn't have to do this. You know, they could have had a look at it and say, "We're all right. You know, we'll give you a few sort of, you know, training sessions and whatnot." But they've been 100% behind us. So we train every Tuesday evening, 6 o'clock till 7 on the Arms Park. And that's where our games will be played as well. We've got a few games lined up. We've, I mean, I think it's been a big learning experience for them, as it would be at any club. So we've actually helped sort of, I suppose, inform the coaches around the way in which we just see differently. So again, there's lots. We're just designing our new kit for next season, so we've made it as accessible as possible. So it's got because, you know, if you have a blue kit and then you got the blue stands, for people like me, that all merges into one. So there's lots of little subtle tweaks and nuances that we bring into the training that makes it easier for our players, which is also just a bit of a learning for the coaches as well.
Right. Ben, is there anything you want to know? Or?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this is really interesting. Is it just an adults team at the moment, or is there a youth setup? And sort of, if there is there sort of like a future? Do you sort of hope to be sort of instrumental in sort of spreading this sort of sport and growing it?
Yeah, it's just adults at the moment. So you've got to be 16 or over to play. And 100%. You know, certainly personally, I want to be instrumental in developing this, not just in Wales, but around the world. You know, when I stop playing, which, you know, I want to keep going as long as I can, but I want to be the first registered blind WRU coach to coach the game, because that insight that you bring just from living with sight loss into coaching, again, is quite a unique insight. So yeah. It's something that's going to grow. I mean, and over the years, it would be wonderful to have, you know, in schools, you know, because there's lots of sort of schools for different kids with different disabilities or special educational needs. And even if you know, they don't end up playing for a club, you know, having those sessions in a school can just make such a difference to kids. You know, it's about rugby being accessible to everybody.
Definitely. So Gareth, if you want to. Actually, I've got one more question about the team. What's the age ranges that you've got? So, what's your youngest player and what's your oldest player?
Well, myself, I'm 21. I'm one of the older players. I'm in my sort of late 40s. But then the youngest player we've got, he's a guy, Ethan. He was with the Bristol Bears Development Academy up until 18 months ago in the mainstream academy. But he lost his sight in a very, very short period of time. So he's 18. He's our youngest player at the moment. So 18 to people like myself in the 40s. I'd say the majority of people are in their sort of mid to late 20s.
Right.
So
18. That's so young.
Yeah, well, I think it was 16 when it actually happened to him. So yeah, but he's an absolute legend in terms of how he handled it and what he's got planned for his future in terms of career and sport. And I'm just so pleased for people like him that there's a game there, because this will take him around the world. Literally this game. So
I was just about to come on to that, because obviously yourself, it's took you around the world. So if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I went to so 18 months ago I went to Japan, played in the part of the Rugby World Cup, the mainstream Rugby World Cup, where England took a visually impaired team over to Tokyo, and we played the Japanese visually impaired team. We had 3 tests against them. It was in one of the main stadiums that was being used for the World Cup games. And that was just a mind-blowing experience. And I actually, again, even though I'm knocking on a bit now, I still came back a very different person. Because we're just constantly learning throughout life. And in terms of, you can imagine what Tokyo is like. It is like what you see on the TV. It is just nuts. There's just people everywhere. Just in terms of being able to cope with that and navigate your way around this busiest city in the world, it just gave me a hell of a lot of confidence coming back from there, as well as having an amazing time as well, just culturally, just seeing the country.
How did you get on?
We won the 3 tests, but they a couple of them are really close. They're a good team. They're good. Japan is a really good, strong rugby nation these days. But yeah, there's just it's all the cliches. It just how sport brings people together, no matter where you are. Playing against 15 Japanese people, we've all got one thing in common. Rugby. It's just superb.
No, definitely. Also, beside the rugby, how did it feel pulling on that England shirt?
Well, it's a funny one, because I grew up in England. I was born in England, in Oxfordshire, but both my parents are Welsh, and so I used to get sort of the mickey taken out of me in primary school and secondary school, so I had a Welsh rugby top on. We're getting filled in by all the but do you know what? These opportunities, it was just, I know, it was a special opportunity moment, really, just to play international sport. And again, it doesn't matter how old you are or what the sport is or what your story is, to have that opportunity, it is a once in a lifetime thing. And yeah, it was really special. Again, really proud. It would have been great if it was closer to home, so other folks could have been there. But yeah, I'll take that any day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
So I was going to say, I think that's literally every young lad's dream, is to put on your national top, isn't it, and go represent your country at World Cup or an Olympics. That's just another side question. Is it an Olympics sport yet?
No, it's not. That's in terms of one of the long-term aims. The sort of the next major thing will be the Rugby World Cup in France in 2023. That's where we'll be looking to have as many international teams as possible. And then I think from there, you're looking at things like Commonwealth Games as a stepping stone to the Olympics or the Paralympics, which is quite a lengthy road, but we're on it. We've begun that road. And this is what I'm saying before, that this game is going to be here forever, and 20, 30 years time, you'll see it at the Olympics. And if I can play a part in just getting that off the ground, that's just an amazing thing to have been involved in.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Unbelievable. Also, I was just going to ask, as probably one of the only blokes I know who's played international sport, how is that? How do you feel when you're about to play your first test in an international game? The nerves must have been kicking in, surely.
Well, yeah, it's nuts, because it is a bit like what you see on the TV. I mean, there's loads of people crowd. It's a big thing for the Japanese. They had a choir there, the Minister of Sport doing a speech before. So you're doing the anthems, it's it's really exciting, is perhaps what I remember from it. And you're there, you just before, in terms of warming up or your preparation, the 48 hours led to that. We talk about warm-ups a lot in terms of physically, but we're also very focused about warming our minds up. you know, just getting into the mindset. And like everybody says, once the whistle goes, that's it. You just game on and totally focused on that. But yeah, just a really surreal but special feeling. And I did, you know, again, what was quite interesting on reflection is I wasn't nervous. It was kind of, I'd actually got to where I wanted to be. So anything, whatever came next within that sort of hour or 2 hours was going to be, you know, special. So it was just a really content feeling.
I mean, what we say with like football is get that first tackle in early or something like that. Was there like something you did, or early doors first game? Was there something that calmed them? Well, not that you had any nerves, but is there something that calmed you kind of like, right, I know what I'm doing now?
Well, yeah, and it was a really bad pass, actually. So it's from the first scrum, I got the ball. And again, we were trying to sort of play quite a tight game without doing anything and I just gave a pass that was just too long and too hard. And you know, it was just like, you know, I think that's where I did get a bit, when I said I was about content and before, but it just got away from me a little bit for a few seconds. But then after that, it's just, right, okay, just really focus into your systems and your protocols. And it was fine after that. But that was the thing that I remember most from it. Still kick myself when I see it on video. But, you know, let's get that out of the way at the start, isn't it?
Yeah, true. So true. So obviously moving on from the team, just personally yourself, how did you first lose your sight? How old were you, and what was that story?
Well, it goes back quite a long way. So when I was about 18, 19, my older brother, he's only a couple of years older than me, was having problems with his sight in terms of driving. He couldn't pass his driving test. He couldn't see the number plate well enough. They went to the opticians, had some tests, and they picked up that he had an eye condition. It's called retina pigmentosa, which is generally genetic and hereditary. So it meant that myself and my other little brother had to have these tests, and it found out that we had it. And basically what it means is that you get little bits of pigment on the back of your eye, on the retina, and that stops light coming through, or as much light as should come through. But the prognosis then was that, it's degenerative, so it gets worse over time. They're saying, maybe when you're in your 60s and 70s, you'll be, very, very poor vision. And so when you're that age, that's a million years away. But it did affect things around my career and stuff. I couldn't drive either. So it had a bit of an effect there. But carried on playing rugby and sport and all the rest of it. But increasingly, I was struggling under floodlights because you can't see in the dark at all with this eye condition. And so that was having an effect in terms of sort of training and stuff. But I would say really sort of like through my sort of 20s, like I kind of like sailed through. But it was only sort of like towards my later, into my 30s, where I started to see quite a significant deterioration. I started sort of having quite a lot of falls, walking things, bumping things over. And that was really the sort of the trigger to get my eyes checked again, which then led me to finding out about my, how bad things were really.
Yeah. One second, Ben, can you mute yourself, mate? You're Gareth.
Sorry.
Gareth's talking, I can hear him twice, mate. Sorry, carry on, mate.
That's all right. No, so yeah, it's basically, it was quite a slow sort of thing. But then about 6 years ago, my ex-partner at the time was saying, look, you've got to get your eyes checked out because it's got really, really bad. And I knew it got really, really bad, but I hadn't heard anything from the hospital for a couple of years. It's things like walking into lampposts and stuff. And because I look like I don't have a disability, people think you're weird. Like, you go into a pub and the first thing you accidentally walk into a load of people sitting down because it takes time for your eyes to adjust coming in from the daylight into a dark environment. So there's lots of little incidents, I would say. And then I made an appointment to go up to the Heath Hospital. And they did some tests, and then 2 weeks later I got a letter through the door. It was, dear Mr. Davis, you're now registered blind. And it was like, fuck, because I was told that when I was 18, and it's something you dread. And there I am in my sort of like, late 30s, and just a letter through the door saying you. and that was a real sort of like, that just had a massive, my sort of world kind of like turned upside down at that point. And I was also really angry about the way in which the hospital did it, because they're supposed to sit you down and talk you through it and offer you sort of like different support, but they didn't. And it turned out that they'd lost my notes for about 3 years, which is why I hadn't been called back in for more tests. So it's just it was still a really sort of quite poor way that it all came out in the end. And that really that was the sort of the beginning of the end for the next sort of 3 or 4 years, really, where I didn't accept what was going on, and just things just unraveled, really.
Right. So just going back, like currently, how good's your sight now? What
Right.
percentage would you say? How would you explain it to like the likes of me and Ben, who probably wouldn't know?
Okay, so I've got in my left eye, I've got about 10% vision, and in my right eye, I've got 0.
Right.
So it's like, think about looking through a toilet roll, and that's what you're looking through. That's it. The rest is like if you looked in a misted up mirror or a frosted windscreen. You can see images, but you've got absolutely no detail at all. So that's what you rely on, just that little bit of vision.
Yeah. So I think for yourself, was it a slow deterioration? Did you notice it going?
It was steady, but then there was quite a big sort of like dip. Which was just before I went back to the hospital and found out about it. And that's the way it goes. There's no rhyme or reason. It's not you can't plot it on a graph, because it's your body, I suppose. And there's just little. So what I've got now could go as well. So that's.
Is that when you worry about the fact that the rest of it could go as well, or?
No, I don't now. I just sort of literally try and live in the moment, and I'm also very, very grateful for what I've got. I've got a decent job. I've got my health. Got 2 great kids, house. So I've kind of like got everything I need. Don't get me wrong. If that does happen, that'll be tough. That'll be really tough. But I really don't worry about it because I can't control it. What I found in life is that if you can't control something, don't worry about it, because what's the point? You're just using up a lot of negative energy if you're just worrying about things you've got no way of shaping.
Oh, that's such a good point. Ben, do you want to unmute yourself, mate, and ask any
Cheers. Yeah, sorry about that. I think it's my phone is echoing. I think Gareth, I think like the when people are like represented across different boards, and like children see I don't know what point I'm trying to make. Basically, I was watching the Meghan Markle interview a couple of weeks ago. I remember Meghan was talking about how her as a woman of colour, younger girls of colour, seeing her in that position gives them sort of hope and bit of courage and sort of like a goal, because they're seeing sort of they're represented in sort of like higher positions. And I feel like yourself, like you're probably helping so many people that you don't even know you're helping yet. And hopefully this gets a bit more coverage and rugby keeps going. And then so many more children and who are just not suffering with vision, just sort of other, worries, anxiety, things like that, will just see somebody like you who's so confident and strong and doing so many like great things in the country and the world, and sort of really like look up to, and you'll be like a role model for them.
Yeah, I hope that's the case, because my experience was I didn't have anyone to see. You just hear this, you just know a few stereotypical people about blind, it comes to blind people. But you're right, I would like, my sort of journey, or not, I haven't really got a message as such, but just the way I live my life for anybody around me to take a bit of hope from, really. That it doesn't matter how sort of many times you get knocked down, you get up again and you just keep going forward. And it is about just having gratitude, I think, as well, for what you do have. But also, I think, I think people could also learn from the mistakes that I made as well, by not talking about my emotions or my fears and my worries, and just bottling it all up, or, just getting on the beers because that was the easy option, rather than, again, having an open conversation with somebody about what I was scared about. So So yeah, I mean, if people, I have been called an inspiration before, quite a lot, and I used to sort of struggle with that a bit. But do you know what? If I am, that's fantastic, because we need people in this world, just who can just give you that one sort of sound bite that you remember for years and years and years. You don't have to be like a guru. We just pick up these little things from different people we meet in our lives, and if I can impart just a few little bits of knowledge along the way, fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I never realised how sort of just doing this with Jared and talking to so many different people about how literally just try and helping one person. You don't really that's you actually helped somebody so much in their life. I think that's such a big thing that people think they have to change everyone or everything, but they really don't. It's just, it really is the small little change in life to try and help each other.
Well, I think what you got to do first is change yourself. That's what I had to do. Basically, I had to rebuild my whole mindset about where I was, what I wanted, where I wanted to go, and that takes for a lot of people, you've got to hit rock bottom to realise that. And that's my point, is that I don't think you don't necessarily have to. It's just about learning from other people. So yeah, I've kind of lost my train of thought now, but
sorry, go on. You were talking about, if you wouldn't mind, you were talking about after you'd lost your sight and how you weren't talking and things kind of unravelled a little bit. We were speaking before this, and you mentioned you wanted to speak about how obviously it's amazing to see how you are now, but you wanted to touch on the fact that it wasn't always like this. You weren't always this positive and this.
No. So I sort of did all the wrong things. I used alcohol as a way of coping. I was never like your alcoholic who'd sit on the park bench, that thing with a brown paper bag, but I'd go to the pub every day before going home, have a couple of pints, get a bottle of wine to take home, because it just sort of, it just suppresses your actual natural feelings. And I didn't talk about what I was worried about with my ex, and I got into a really bad healthy way of living, really, and that kind of ended up in sort of complete marriage breakdown. Me then living by myself and just like I say, sort of hitting the bottle big time. And also I just never accepted that I'd lost my sight, because you call it sight loss, and it is like a grieving process that you go through. And I'd gone through a lot of grief as well leading up to that point. I lost my mum, and then a few years before that, and then sort of lost my marriage, house. I had a guide dog at the time, and I remember when I moved out, I was sort of stood outside this new flat with a bin bag full of clothes, a guide dog, and a mattress. That's all I had, sort of thing, and it was like, how did this all happen, But it was only at that year, and then I went on a bit of a mad one for a year, and sort of like I say, sort of drinking, doing sort of lots of risky things, stupid stuff, and then what happened was that I just realised that I had to completely change my lifestyle, because we all know inside ourselves, you've got that voice, that authentic self, and then it was just like, Gareth, what the fuck are you doing, man? This ain't you, and I knew that all along, but it just come to a point, and it was I think it was like around Christmas 3 years ago. I just on my Facebook thing, I saw this thing called 1 Year No Beer kept popping up. You do like a 28-day dry January challenge, and you could do a 90-day and a 365. So I just did that because I wanted to get off the booze, because I knew I was killing myself, really. And I did that, and that was absolutely. And I told everybody at my local pub and all the boys, and it's like, oh no, you're not. You're never going to do that. Blah blah blah. And I did, and it was just a life-changing moment when I started that, because I basically had a bit of clarity in life for the first time in years and years. And then I also sought counselling as well about my sight loss, and also sort of dealing with going through a divorce at the time and everything. It was just so much stress going on. But I just wish I'd have done that 5 years ago. Not necessarily to save my marriage, because that happens anyway, but just purely for myself and my own mental health, that if I'd have sought just to speak to somebody, because I didn't speak to anybody about what I was scared about, not even my best mates, certainly not my father, my brother. I just kept it all in, and it just goes pop in the end. So yeah, I just wish that, certainly for men and women who are listening to this, if you are struggling, it is a case of talking to somebody, and these days it's so confidential online, or certainly through the university. I'm sure there's tons of opportunities, but just talk to, even if it's just a friend. It's just to sort of begin that process, and yeah, that would be something I would definitely suggest, is just to sort of open up, and not be scared to be open, because that was a big thing. Yeah, just do that.
Gareth, can I just say thank you so much, mate, for sharing that, because do you know what? I think it's so easy it would be so easy for me and Ben and whoever's watching this to look at you now and go, oh, what a bloke, like what an inspirational guy. But it's so good to have that for people right now who might be struggling or might be going through something similar to, well, perhaps not even something similar, but something that they're struggling with at the minute. I know it can give people an end goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, to look at the way you've turned your life around now, to the bloke you are now, is from what you were saying about how much you were struggling. And also, it's so important to say that obviously you sought help, and the fact that help clearly has helped you a lot. Do you know what I mean? That has can clearly turn your life around. So it's so important. You're the perfect guy for what the message that me and Ben are trying to get across. Really, is kind of like talking to people and stuff like that is so important, Ben.
And what is, we all think it's just us who are worried, or if I said this, people are going to judge me. But everybody has got issues going on, and it's, again, just don't worry about being judged. I think those days have gone, but we still worry about what other people will think about us and say about us. It's like, you've got to look after number one and just be authentic to yourself. That's the thing, and say what is worrying you, because it's such a weight off your shoulders.
Ben, do you want to add anything to that, mate?
Yeah, definitely. I just think that the stigma really is just slowly going and going and going. Like, the thought of talking about, like, I was feeling depressed, or I've been feeling really down, I just don't think I would have ever talked about that maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I wouldn't even thought about even talking to, like, really close to both my brothers. I just don't think we would have ever had that conversation. Yeah. And then I think for me personally, it really took lockdown to sort of really understand about mental health, and that, people do feel down and start talking about it. And then since then, I just think that, especially this year, just from a university perspective, just seems that just so much is being done at the moment about mental health, and it's just taking loads of individuals to just come out and just talk about it, and just make it feel just it's okay. Like, there is no stigma to it, and everything, like, things do turn out okay in the end.
But it's normal. I think, that's the thing, that we've all, again, as a society, we've been conditioned to think that if you say you've got mental health, well, that means you're equals madness. It doesn't. It just means real life, and so hopefully that's changed. And also your point, again, around sort of like men and stuff, it was a big thing for me saying I'm not drinking anymore to people, to blokes, men, and, a lot of, sort of rough, tough sort of rugby guys, and the whole culture where you've got to have a drink to have a laugh. And it was like, boys, I'm not doing that anymore. That's not me, but still going to the pub, still seeing people, still being around it. And I think that made people think, because it's like, if he can do it, I can do it. And then they start, because I didn't go up so much, so you go back a month later and you can see how you physically change, and how much better you physically look, and so it's just have that little, just take that step to either have a conversation. We all know that if there's parts in our lives that aren't right, or we're not, if people are doing, dabbling with sort of drugs or drink or other risky behaviors, we kind of know that that's really not what I want to be doing. So it's kind of like, acknowledge that, accept that, and then just find whatever suits you as a route out of that, because there's always a way out of things as well. That's something else that I've learned. There is always a way out of a situation that you're not happy with.
So we touched earlier on you're talking about way outs of things, kind of how much sport has really helped you out. So how did you initially get into? How did you? What am I asking? How did Cardiff? How did it start? How did you? Was it obviously you played it abroad in Japan and played for England as well. Was it something you thought, right, I want to take this back to Wales? And then how did you recruit players? How did that whole process go?
Yeah, well, there's a charity based in London called the Change Foundation, and they're the people that actually started VI Rugby about 4 years ago, and they really sort of got behind the whole England thing. They work with Premiership clubs over there. One of the ones they were working with was Harlequins, and a friend of mine in London heard about this, told me, and that's how I got into it. So really, how it ended up in Cardiff is that the Change Foundation were talking to the Cardiff Blues, and it was around the time that we'd just come back from Japan. They put on a taster day. They put some comms out through RNIB Cymru and other local sort of charities for people with sight loss. Just sort of saying to people, come on down and chuck a ball around. We're going to sort of introduce VI Rugby. And really it started from there. And I think pretty much from the first moment, the coaching staff and the management of the Blues saw, I don't know, I suppose, how liberated these people who normally have to walk around the street with a cane or a guide dog, they're on a rugby pitch, chucking a ball around, having an amazing time. Do you know what I mean? You could just feel the positive energy of it all. And like I say, they've run with it from there. In terms of recruiting players, it's been word of mouth, it's through Twitter. But what's the biggest sort of step forward is that in the last sort of 6 months, the WRU have now taken it into their inclusion and disability and inclusion strategy for the next 4 years. So they're setting up, the Ospreys are setting up a club. There's going to be one in North Wales. And so there's just going to be, I think when we probably come out of lockdown and we're playing again, there's going to be so much more things to say and comms about this is where it's happening. Recruitment that'd be one way of recruiting. But we're really sort of keen to get in with the universities like yourselves, you know, your arch rivals. I know you've got a few of those, haven't you? Cardiff Met, Swansea, you know, all sorts of different people. But yeah, just to get in with the union, because you've got 40,000 students in Cardiff. So there's going to be a number of those that have got a bit of sight loss. So we're just looking to get those guys along. Yeah,
that was one of the main aims, wasn't it, really? Because so obviously people won't know, but me and you, Gav, have been in touch probably for the last about 3 weeks, something like that. Yeah. About just purely writing a little piece for to go out to through yourselves and setting up a website and things like that we've kind of tried to do together to kind of try and make things a little bit more get the message out there.
Yeah.
And two, on like having a website and having stuff like that will just help really. So that's how we managed to get you on, to be fair. So I said to Ben the other day about getting you on and told him about your story, and it's so we spoke little bits and bobs, but like actually hearing the full story has been fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Ben, would you say?
Yeah, every week I just get my mind blown on this podcast because you just forget there's so many people in the world that just live and everyone's just got such a different story. And everyone's got a different outlook on life and a different way they think about things, and it's just it's amazing. So thank you very much, Gareth. That's been really
a pleasure. Yeah, the one thing I would say just finally as well is just in terms of what I went through and how I found my way out of it. It's just the importance of your gut feeling. You know, if something feels wrong, it probably is, and it's just about listening to that. And when you start feeling that, and it can be in any sort of situation or over a period of time about a lifestyle thing. Listen to that and and act on it. That would be a real message I'd like to get out there.
Yeah. So one last thing, that you said you wanted to talk about was any advice you give to people our sort of age, with the experiences you've had, and also someone who is perhaps worried about losing their sight or is going through the process that you've been through. Is there anything advice you'd give? So first of all, people just. Students our age in general, and then perhaps more specifically in your situation.
Yeah, with the students, or you guys, I would say don't worry. Seriously, don't worry about life. You know, there's so much pressure on you guys running your dissertations or doing masters, finances. It will all work out, you know. And even if you don't get that next step that you want to go to, be it a job or further learning, you know, life just takes you places that you haven't even thought about yet. You know, so, and you'll have such an amazing journey. So don't worry, because again, I used to worry all the time about stuff, and just enjoy the journey that you know, I suppose like the universe takes you on, without sounding too woo woo, but it's true. I would just sort of like, again, like I said about gut feeling, you guys will be doing stuff. You know, it's really good stuff, not so good stuff. Just listen to that gut feeling. And the other thing, just in life generally, is just keep showing up every day. You know, even on those tough days, just keep showing up, and things ease. You know, there's ups and downs along the way, but just keep showing up every day, and just be there for each other. You know, your mates and your family. That's a really sort of important thing. In terms of people living with sight loss, well, it's tough. It is. And especially when I look back and remember how I felt when I first sort of had that news. And I suppose it's similar. It's easy to say, don't worry, but you do. But it's just to know that there is so much support out there for you. And the way that you feel at that moment in time, you're not always going to feel like that. You know, you will do because it's like a grief cycle. You know, like when you lose somebody, it's so emotionally impactful. But over time, you never forget, but you just adapt. So again, just keep showing up every day, and take the support and help that's there for you, and don't like do what I did and just sort of get stuck into as many pints as you can or bottles of wine, or because that there's never an answer there. It just increases your anxiety and it's just not the way to go. So yeah, but just, and for both of both cohorts, you know, students, people with sight loss, just never give up hope, because it's just such an amazing world out there. And you guys, I'm so sort of not envious, but you're on the brink of just an amazing life ahead of you, and just go with that flow and see where it takes you.
Definitely. I'm so guilty of worrying way too much about things that are like my next step, or like myself in third year is kind of probably exactly what I need to hear right now, is just don't worry about that. It'll all sort itself at the end. My mum's a massive believer in that, and I hear it from her probably once every couple of days, but hearing it from yourself, it's so true that things are just, sometimes things don't go the way you expect them to go, but it'll be good at the end.
Well, listen, Joe, the future's just your imagination, and the past is just a memory. The only actual real thing you have is right now.
Yeah.
You know, so just enjoy that. And that doesn't mean to you know, that you have to do stupid stuff or anything. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
Ben.
Sorry, I started to speak about muting myself, but yeah, no, I literally just sitting, just nodding my head, just agreeing totally. I really like that quote actually. The future's was it imagination? What was it? Sorry.
Yeah, well, it is. It's not even a quote; it's a fact. It's just your imagination, and the past is a memory. Again, another fact. So the only real thing you actually have is now. That's just what it is. Yeah.
No, yeah, definitely. I think that's such a good thing to go by. I read the other day that anxiety is about worrying about the future. Like you get anxious about things that haven't happened yet. And I just never realised that you feel anxious about going situations, but it's all in your head. Like it's a strange concept, but everybody goes through it.
It is. We live ourselves by the stories that we tell ourselves. That's how we live our lives, and we just tell ourselves stories, you know. But it's just our imagination, and 99% of it is just, you know. And I'm guilty of it as well. But when you actually stop and think about things like that, you just realize, and also all those things, those bad things that we worry about, they generally never happen. You know, things are never as bad as you think they're going to be, you know, but we still do it. So it's just finding ways of, you know, I'm a big believer in like things like audio books and personal development stuff. And it just helps you sort of like edge away from that real anxiety.
So like a final message really, Gareth, for you. Do you want to give, for anyone listening who perhaps might have sight loss and is in Cardiff and wants to get involved in the team? Do you want to give them like either like your number? We'll put all that in the, well, we'll ask CUTV to put all that in the in the description below and stuff like that. But just like your number, well, we'll put that in. But just the training times and where it is and things like that, just in general.
Sure. So we train at Cardiff Arms Park, which is next to the Millennium Stadium, every Tuesday between 6 and 7. If people who have sight loss are interested and you don't know where it is, we'll come and meet you at Central Station, or we meet you at some place where you know, because with sight loss, finding a new place can be really daunting. So we're trying to take away those barriers. You can direct message us through our Twitter account, which is the Blues VI Rugby, or at the Blues VI Rugby, or give me a call on the number and my work email address, and we'll just have a chat. And it's not just about playing; it's just about being part of a team and part of a journey. So don't be afraid if you've never played rugby before. You don't have to. You can just come and help us in other ways.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, I don't know about you, but we'll have to get, when we can, we'll have to get down at some point and have a watch or a that's all right.
More than well.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you need help in the setup and things like that? Something I would love to help out with and get involved in, really, even though we're playing. But is there what ways can we help and can we get involved? Because I'm sure there'd be a lot of lads and girls around who would definitely want to get involved and help sort of build this up.
Right. Well, the Blues have just taken on a new development and volunteer coordinator. So I would put you in touch with him. I was speaking to him on Monday, actually. That would be sort of the most direct way of getting involved and helping out. Because we've got some games coming up in July. So we've got our first couple of games. And we'd love, different people to help out in different ways and just come and have a look as well.
Do you know what, as well, obviously we've just did a podcast last week with a few lads from rugby. It'd be great if we could get you in contact with the Uni Rugby Club as well to do some sort of thing with them. So that'd be great as well. So I'll drop you a text after, Gareth, to give you some sort of feedback from the Uni Rugby as well. So anyway, mate, thank you so much for that. We both really appreciate it, and you're a very inspirational bloke.
Thank you very much.
Definitely.
I didn't tell you the story about Tom himself either.
Thank you very much, mate. Have a great day.
Whilst it was recorded. All right, boys. I'll see you later.
Cheers, Gareth. Thanks, mate. Thank you.